Welcome back to the conversation. We are coming into the fourth and final part of this conversation. We actually took this conversation, we broke it up into 4 parts. So if you haven't watched parts 1, 2, or 3, go back and catch up and then come back here for this final part of this really important conversation. So two more things that I want to talk about here as we kind of wrap up our time together. We're gonna have to do this again sometime. But very vulnerably, don't hold anything back. I want you to, what can non-Black people do better? Or you know what, let me just, if something offends you, I'll just speak to myself. Me, what can I do better? As a non-Black person, as a pastor, what can I do better? Tell me, in this moment, what can I do better in light of everything we've talked about today?
Well, I just think that what I've been telling my non-people of color friends or non-Black friends is just be honest with yourself. Own your own trauma. How's racism affected you in any way? You know, how is and it has a lot of people. There are people who want to stand up who haven't, who've seen other people mistreated and not done anything, and that bothers them.
Right.
Okay, because of the pressure of them standing up, or love her. You know what I mean? And there was lots of backlash. There are lots of people on the right side of this thing that have lost their lives standing up for people of color. Okay, and so there's that fear as well. There's that social part of this whole concept that we're talking about. So just be honest with that part of it, and where you stand on the issue of this, racism and things.
Yeah, be honest with yourself.
Be honest with yourself. Yeah,
that's good.
Because it starts with acknowledging that you're within a system, and everything that you're probably feeling or seeing is a result of that. And so I always tell my friends, you can go to the doctor and say, I have a headache. I've had a headache for the past 5 months, and he runs tests, and you're talking about how bad it's been, and he comes back in and he tells you, you don't have a headache. And you're like, no, I do have a headache. I've had it for 5 months. And these are the facts, the facts that a lot of people get caught up in. No, you can't tell me I don't have a headache. I've had it for the last 5 months. And the doctor says, you don't have a headache, you have a tumor. Who's telling the truth?
Wow.
One of them is facts. One of them is the truth. And I think that there's the root that he's saying. You need to get down past the facts and say, there is a system that we're all in that can give you a headache every day. And a lot of people were like, well, these are the facts. You'll say, no, but there's a greater truth. And I think for the first time, so many of my friends are awakening and saying, oh my gosh, I see it now. And it's as if the tumor has been pulled from their eye, and they finally can see it. And now they're saying, what do we do about the tumor? And I said, well, we can get this tumor out your eye. Well, then you're going to be able to see everything that's around you. And I do think that goes back to social studies. I think that goes back to, you were raised with the facts, but you were never given the truth. And I think it's beautiful when we're looking at an entire generation, when you're down there at the march, that they say, no, we are truth seekers. Past the facts, we're looking for the truth.
Wow.
That is where you start seeing change.
Man,
That's
good.
Reach.
I love that.
You can press that 10 rewind button.
Yeah.
10 times, go back to listen to that part again. That's so good, Joe. What else? What else can we do? What else can we do?
Yeah.
How can we be better? What's the way forward?
I think beyond the inner work, which, I see it as kind of a short-term plan and a long-term plan. So the long-term plan is really checking your implicit bias, finding out the truth and versus the facts. And then the short-term goal for me, talking to you, and as I've been talking to my white friends, is to be a disruptor. Kind of like what Terrence was talking about, to be a disruptor. So what that means is that you have to stand up to your heroes. You have to stand up to mom. You have to stand up to dad. You will probably have to stand up to grandma, grandpa with love and grace and honor. But when you hear a racist joke, this is a low-hanging fruit, but people want to know exactly, what do I do? Before, maybe you would have ignored it. You can't do that anymore. Find out who are the heads of the committees, educational committees, corporate committees. What are their agendas, right? If you're privy to that, if you have privilege, you need to leverage that and find out what the hiring practices are. Mix it up. Be a Jordan. When you see something that could be better, don't stay silent. So that is what I want to offer you.
Yeah, that's so good.
I think
What can we do better?
so when I hear that question, I'm reminded of a story in scripture where Jesus' parents and family are looking for him. And he's preaching and he's with his people. And somebody comes and says, hey, your family's outside. And Jesus is like, nah, this is my family. And so I think understanding that it's going to cost you something.
Wow.
And I think that in order, particularly people in this space, people who are Jesus followers, like there were things that were sacrificed in order to follow Jesus, for starters. But as I think about just in a lot of ways, there's going to be disagreements, there's going to be arguments, probably with some of the ones that you love and you're closest to. But I think the key in that is to allow our following of Jesus to supersede even the bloodline. Because there's going to be moments when you're having conversations and it's like, you just don't get it, mom or dad or whoever the case may be. And you're gonna feel a tension and you're gonna feel a moment of just frustration, and maybe even you're gonna feel abandoned because the people that you loved and still love don't necessarily see your point of view and refuse to see your point of view.
Right.
And I think in that moment, like we have to choose really like who is our Lord and who is our family.
Right.
And I think that understanding that concept of this following of Jesus really supersedes this bloodline.
Yeah.
Higher
Yeah.
order.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
And remembering that this is not a political issue. This
Right,
has nothing to do with liberal or conservative.
Yeah.
Right.
The other, the
Who's
parties,
president?
who's
Yeah.
the president.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with me as a human being,
Yes.
and whatever I believe
Right.
and whatever you believe. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I matter?
That's exactly right.
All right. Does
Yeah.
my neck have to be on the ground
Yeah.
for it to resonate with me?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I mean, it's simple. It's a simple proposition.
And Jordan, you talked about this earlier too. I don't want to skate by it, but proximity isn't good enough.
No.
You know, like are you doing life?
Mhm.
And some of y'all say, well, I need to make some new friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Facts.
You know, and don't feel awkward that your one black kind of friend gets a call today and he or she's going to know exactly why. Make the call anyway. You know,
Yeah.
like
Do it.
just go ahead.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, even for me personally, we've talked about I love to preach, but I'm like, I need to pass the mic more so that our students can see more people of color preaching. Not just black men, but women, period.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I can do better there.
Yeah.
That's good.
We got to do better there. Proximity. Anything else immediately? And because I want to ask too about this standing up to your parents thing. There inevitably are going to be students listening to this whose parents, or they're learning things about their parents that they've never known before. And you said there's short term, there's long term, and there's a piece of this where who is your Lord, and then there's a piece of this where it's like, okay, you got to be patient
Absolutely.
in how you do this too,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
how you have
Yeah.
conversations
That's
with people that you don't agree with.
That's
Yeah.
Can you guys speak to that? Even maybe encourage
Yeah.
that student or that person or that adult that
Yeah.
has someone really close to them that isn't seeing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person? that
I
student?
think it starts with the fact that you need to realize this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
It's good.
And I think it's also remaining faithful to the process.
It's good.
This conversation for me is 18 months past the first conversation that I've ever had with someone about this.
Wow.
And so it's remembering that God is faithful and that his timing is perfect.
Yes.
It'll get to the point where, you're hurting, you're seen, but you got to keep pushing. You can't allow, not today, Satan. Like you have to keep pushing because it matters. And eternity matters for most of these people. That's what's hanging in the balance.
Mm.
And so I think
Wow.
that's where it starts.
Wow.
Come on, Jordan.
Wow.
Come on.
Marathon, not a sprint.
Good.
Right? Man,
That's good.
what else would you say to that person struggling?
On the other end of that question or the skepticism is a person, and there's an entire story and history to that person that is crafted that question or that skepticism. And I think remaining curious to your grandpa or grandma
Yes.
as you're talking to them, because I'm sure they might say some things forcefully, aggressively, but keeping that posture of I must not understand enough of your history.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's where you're committed to the marathon and saying I'm going to listen more so that I know how better to respond to what you're saying.
Wow.
That's exactly right.
I don't know if this is totally true. I've said this before to some of our younger leaders at our church. With the right posture, you can say almost anything.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
You
It's
can
like
almost
bless
say
your heart.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
right. But with the right
Yeah.
posture,
But
Absolutely.
authentically.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can say almost anything.
I think that's why we're around this table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we do have that. We're blessed with that
Yeah.
gift.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is the person that thinks other than you think. In most cases, they got that thought process over time, honestly, based on their circumstances, situations, people who have been around them. So, I mean, forget the fault thing.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So that's good.
Lay the fault stuff away.
Yeah.
All right. And that, that's where all the guilt's coming in. Look, I get it. You weren't around, exposed to people of color. You may have been taught this from generations down past. And so you feel the way you feel honestly.
Right.
Okay.
Man.
It's okay. That's why I said, be honest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we can move forward.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you don't, a lot of people don't even know me not to like me. But if you just look at me and you don't like me, check it.
Yes.
Wow.
Just
Yeah.
check it.
Yeah.
Or anyone, just check
Yeah.
it. Or don't want to say, hey.
And that's so helpful though for our students that have that parent or that grandparent.
Yeah.
They got that from somewhere.
Yeah. It's okay.
Joe, I love the language that you used when we chatted on Zoom last week, just kind of about this. You talked about those thoughts and those feelings crystallized. It's your words, not mine. And it's not just going to be like one conversation
No.
flips that, bursts those crystals. I mean, it's going to take chipping away
Yes.
and time and love and patience and more patience than you want to have. But like you've said a bunch on Instagram as well, is that we got to make a difference, not a point.
Right.
So what does that look like?
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Right?
So
It
good.
does it. And I think there's also a mutual negotiation that happens where you're saying, sometimes people are not used to you being your whole self.
Right.
And so while you're being patient with them, you are also asking, now, if you're going to talk like that here, I'm going to be my whole self too. So you may hear me say some things that don't align with you, but I don't want to shrink myself. And so I do think it's working with each other to say, hey, not only am I trying to understand them better, I know that they are now having to understand me better. And so that is happening. That's a duality happening at the same time. And so I think remain encouraged if you're that family table at the dinner and you're thinking, I should say something. I said, figure out a way to say it then so that you don't have to walk away. I do think there's a very depreciating feeling you can have if you're like, I was not me today.
Yeah.
And every time I'm around my family, I don't feel like I'm me. And that's where I'm seeing students say, I just don't want to be around my family anymore. I said, no, you just want your family to understand who you are now.
Right.
So let's start having those conversations as well.
Yeah.
So by way of application, I mean, there's patience. It's easy, because for me too, it's almost like, man, what are we disagreeing with, right? But even that, it's okay, patience. But then also understanding, even if I don't agree, let me listen to the story that you've got.
Yes.
Yep.
Let me let you process how you got to where you are. I think that's helpful for some students to know, okay, it's okay for me to listen, Ken, to my dad or my grandpa or my grandmother tell me why they feel the way they feel.
Yes.
Let them just talk it out.
Yes.
I don't have to rebut everything that they say.
Absolutely. Right.
And then remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And then if I could too, and this is not a Jesus juke, but there's also just the Spirit of God that's got to do something that we can't.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You gotta get close enough.
Yeah. Ooh, there
In
it
order
is.
for the Spirit to enter.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Or, yeah.
Proximity is
Don't create a barrier with something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start to build a bridge.
Yeah.
Come on.
And then, prayer.
Yes.
Prayer.
But don't just, my sister told me, pray with your feet. So don't just like, I'm gonna pray about it. Okay, no one's interested in just praying about it.
no.
Okay,
Yeah.
pray with your feet.
Yes.
Pray and then some.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a spirit part of this as well. Where
Absolutely.
we're asking Jesus to do something in the hearts of our parents and or whoever that no point's ever going to make. But then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, okay, I see it now a little bit.
The hearts of our parents, the hearts of our lawmakers, our politicians.
All of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can't forget that. I know it's easy for me, like I'm such a doer.
Yeah.
Just go
Me
fix
too.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get it.
And there's a part of that where that's needed.
Yeah.
But then there's like, okay, let me not forget
That's right.
the power that even my ability to see what's right or wrong is not me.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's good,
in me.
man.
Yeah.
That's good.
Because we're going to keep learning as we go.
Sam is not
Things we
superior
see.
than a racist.
That's so
Right.
good.
No,
Right.
I just have Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
good.
and so
Yeah.
even just
Yeah.
us remembering that
Yeah.
is okay. I'm gonna keep moving, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna trust. I'm gonna pray.
Yeah,
100%.
because there's certain things that we cannot orchestrate nor manipulate.
Yeah.
So part of the reason that George Floyd's video became so widely viewed is because we were in the middle of a pandemic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
people couldn't turn on the sports.
Facts.
People
couldn't turn-
couldn't
yeah.
go
Yeah.
to the
You're already
club.
right here
You had
anyway.
to look
Like
at
you
it.
were, you know.
Yeah, like you couldn't be as distracted. And that was God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Absolutely.
God.
Perfect
God
storm.
brought
Wow.
us here. Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. And that and I want to come into this last question here to wrap up, but and that goes into it's not enough just not to be racist.
Yeah.
You got to be anti-racist.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's and I love this. You said, Ken, let's move past the fault.
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
That's good.
I heard a pastor say, so I'm not take credit. It's not your fault, but it is your fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
Yep.
so good.
It's
That's
good.
Mike Todd, but
Come on.
it's
Strong.
not your fault.
Transparency,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
but now it's
That's
your
your
fight.
fight.
Yeah.
So let's not be
Real.
offended by who's at
Come on.
fault. Let's just fight.
Yeah. That's good,
I
man.
love that, Ken. All right, last question. For now. So you guys all come back one day. We'll film the next one at my house after COVID's over. Okay. But do you have hope for the future?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me why.
Man, these young people, man, they're so strong. They're so courageous. They're out there. They're not going to stop. You will
Yeah.
see this until there is a change. You got lions, lioness, tigers, and bears out there. I'm talking about they are ferocious. Okay? You hear me? Energy, resources,
Yeah.
thought leaders. You got it's, and I heard someone say, we're the leaders. Let me tell you something. If it was 13,700 people at the One Atlanta March, it was 13,700 leaders.
Wow.
Wow.
We don't,
Wow.
they are the Martin Luther King.
Yes.
The church has left the
Yes.
building.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
happening.
Yes.
Okay?
Preach, brother.
Get on board or get left.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
young people are going to make
Yes.
this
Incredible.
happen. They will run the country.
Yes.
Okay? So
Yeah.
that's my hope.
Yeah. Man, that's good.
Yeah.
Who else?
I'm with Ken.
Yeah.
Because as I, and I share this with my kids, when I look at, I don't watch the news often, but when I do, I'm looking at protests all around the
Yeah.
globe.
Yeah.
Right? Beirut,
World.
London,
Yeah,
Australia, New Zealand,
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. And when you look at most of the peaceful marching, it's multicultural, it's
Yeah.
multi-ethnic, it's multi-generational, and it's led by young people.
Yes.
Mm.
And that is so comforting because this is the generation
Right.
that's going to
Yeah.
enact change. And so you've got to be hopeful.
Wow.
And our hope is in Christ.
Yeah.
And look what Jesus is doing. And
He's
there's so much
doing.
fire and fervor and passion that I'm super excited.
Man,
I
that's
got
good.
one other thing.
Okay, go ahead.
This is going to feed some other stuff,
Yeah.
but there is no Martin Luther King. There's no Malcolm X. There's nobody to kill. There's not one person that you can
Yeah.
say, this person is leading this.
Mm.
That's fantastic.
God made it that way.
That's
It's
exactly right.
all of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
So,
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can't shut them all up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
we know the power of hope because you look at
Absolutely.
Dr. King's "I Have a Dream,"
Right.
which was
Yeah.
just a dream
Absolutely.
of hope.
Yep.
I think we know what it can do. I love what Pastor Furtick, who's a white leader, said.
Yeah.
He said when his son, a young kid, saw the video first, George
Yep.
Floyd before him, he said his son had despair in his eyes, and he said there's one thing about denial that can kill, but despair also is just as threatening. And so he said we need to be careful not to be filled with denial or despair. And essentially,
right.
he was saying this one thing. He said, "Hey, if we don't have hope that we can make
right.
an America tomorrow that's greater than today, then
Mm.
what are we fighting towards?" And so,
Mm.
yes, if we're like, it's not your what was the quote you said? It's your
It's not
fight.
your fault.
It's not your fault,
It's your
but
fight.
it's
If we're gonna fight, then we need to fight with a purpose. And every general knows you have to let your army know, like, we can win this. Now, if I get out there in front of the army and say, "Well, probably not gonna lose today," they're probably like, "What?" And so it is that hope of
Yeah.
knowing. Do you believe in these stars and stripes and
Yeah.
what they symbolize? Exactly from that quote
Yeah.
you read at the earlier today. Like, we have to
Mhm.
believe that America is what we believe it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good.
Right.
So I think I am extremely hopeful because having studied history, particularly over these last months or so, and just rereading American history and Black history, which is American history, seeing how the biggest movements and the things that tend to change, for whatever reason, it seems like there's a sacrifice at the beginning of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, talking about Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice so that we all could be free, right? I think you go from there to you go to Emmett Till.
Mm-hmm.
Emmett Till, who was murdered and killed, and his body was mutilated, but his mama had the courage and the vision to allow the world to see her son as he was. And what that did was it sparked a movement.
Yes.
It sparked Rosa saying, no, this ain't happening. It sparked MLK. And so I think whenever you have that sacrifice, something comes behind it.
Yes.
The same with MLK. Just recently watching the MLK assassination tapes, which is basically chronicling his last little bit of time in Memphis. And the sanitation workers of Memphis had 2 of their own killed. And they were the garbage guys. And 2 of them were crushed, I believe, in one of the garbage compactors. And so from that point, they decided, hey, these working conditions aren't working conditions that are good enough or safe enough for us. Plus, we're only getting pennies on the dollars compared to our white counterparts. So what they decided to do was to protest. They said, we're not going to do it. And so if you're looking, even you'll see some of the imagery today where you see the shirts or the signs that say, I am a man.
Yeah.
They come from that sanitation workers march in Memphis. And so during that time, so they're fighting and they're talking to the mayor, and they have these demands of just really trying to be safe and equal to the people that are already in those spaces. But the mayor is completely denying anything, which is ultimately what led Dr. King to that march, which was essentially his last march, because he understood that this wasn't okay. And so him being there, they march, they have this whole entire ordeal. Things get out of hand, they get a little violent. Some people start breaking stuff, and there becomes this whole just violent scene. But what ends up happening though, MLK decides that he'll be back in 2 weeks. And he's like, we're gonna try this thing again. We know that it got crazy and got out of hand this last time, but we're gonna try it again. So he has his press conference, he comes back to Atlanta, and then in 2 weeks, he goes back to Memphis with all hopes and intents of being a part of this sanitation workers march again. So, and what this story does, it chronicles his whole time in Memphis. And so it shows the last message or preaching, sermon from Dr. King, where he talks about, I may not get there with you. I've seen the mountaintop. And then 22 hours later, he's assassinated. And so the crazy part about, even in that sacrifice, like within a week, then you have a civil rights bill that is put into place by the president. You also have within 16 days where white pastors and Black pastors come together all throughout the community, and all of a sudden they go to the mayor, and the mayor's willing to hear their demands. Wow. So in 16 days, the sanitation workers' rights are restored. They're back as usual. And so I think history has shown us that some sacrifice is made and then some change happens. And I believe that what we witnessed with Brother George Floyd's life is he may have just been that same similar sacrifice as those throughout history, where it's like all of a sudden we've woken up and we see now. And all of a sudden there's going to be this movement, there's this power and this passion. And so that's what gives me hope. It's that moment, I believe, kind of parallels with a lot of moments we've seen throughout history. And so having people Jordan's age, the living room's age, like this has been the demographic that has traditionally been the ones that move things.
Wow. Yes,
you know, so like So it's
16-year-old,
and even MLK was in his early 20s whenever he became the leader.
Sure.
So like it is. Right. I am so hopeful because of all that stuff.
Man,
that is so good.
He technically did die in a peaceful protest.
Yes.
Why I can't breathe.
Yes.
That's
right.
Come on. He could have fought back.
Come on,
but you watch someone die in peaceful protest.
Come on, Joe.
Wow.
That's why he sacrificed.
There's pain and then there's passion.
Yes.
T.D. Jakes just preached a message a couple weeks ago. Pain and passion.
Come on. Come on.
He's a Black leader.
Yes.
And then Jakes, right?
And they're like best friends.
They
Burdick is like his
right.
mentor. Yeah. T.D. Jakes is his mentor.
Jakes is legit.
Man, that's so helpful.
That's so good, Terrence.
And I think too, as we kind of round out this conversation, what I want people to hear, whether it be a student or an adult that goes to our church watching this, is You don't have to have a stage to make a difference.
Yes.
You don't have to be holding a microphone to make a difference. I love what Ken said. There's no like just this one leader who's doing it all. No, it's person by person.
Yes.
I'm gonna march. I'm gonna make a friend. I'm gonna lead change. I'm gonna do my homework.
Yes.
I'm gonna pay attention to history. I'm gonna look at the history I did not learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There are so many good resources out there right now, and we're actually we'll link resources on our Instagram, on the bottom of YouTube, that we've compiled from all of you guys, things that our students can be reading,
Yes.
and leaning into to learn and to glean. But we gotta listen and we gotta learn.
Yes.
I'm telling you though, you don't have to have a million Instagram followers to change the world.
That's real.
Anymore.
Jesus had 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have a blue check mark either.
We'll verify.
Yeah. And if anything, also, I hope, this is just the beginning, but I hope that what people heard today too was just real experiences
Yes.
through the eyes of others that don't look like me and that don't look like some of the people watching. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for driving all the way in here, Snellville. But really, I'm grateful. And I also, if I may, I told you this on a Zoom call, but I want to say it publicly. I'm sorry that this is the first time I've done something like this in the 5 years I've been at the living room. I really am. I'm kind of embarrassed by it, if I'm being honest, and kind of ashamed that this is the first time I have made such a big thing about racial reconciliation. That you guys deserve better than that, that the Jesus that I follow calls me to more than that. And so I just want you to hear from me and everybody watching that this isn't just a one-off Sam or checking a box. This is not, I should have been paying attention to this a long time ago.
Man.
And I did not know it was that big of a deal. But now I do. And we're not going to stop with just a combo.
Come on.
Wow.
And so I just want to know that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of change.
We'll help.
Wow.
Step
I'm
up,
grateful
brother.
for each of y'all.
Step up. Let's hit the fight.
So Pastor, you are a part of change.
Yeah. Big facts.
Okay, so you're here now, and I want to thank you for your vision for this.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate all y'all. Thank you so much. And follow all these people. We already threw up their Instagram and all that good stuff earlier. And so they're voices that I believe in, and they're friends, and I'm super grateful. And so, again, thank you guys for joining in. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. TLR fam, let us know if we can do anything for you. Share this with anybody that needs it. And we can't wait to see you guys this fall. And check link below. We'll have resources, books, different things that you can be watching and engaging with to help you learn just a little bit more. We love y'all. We'll see you soon.
Peace.